Good evening. Welcome to PoliticIt podcast. We have Dave Owen tonight.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks for coming back. You said something that I've been thinking about that from the last time we had a conversation, and that was this idea that a small group of people can really have an outside influence in public policy.
Yeah, they certainly do. Well, we were talking about various projects that get targeted by the so-called environmental community. A lot of times there are a lot of other interests going on other than the environment, which is certainly the case in this one project I'm working on. But immediately when they raise a concern and they start talking about it, what does the local media do? They don't even think about it. They don't fact check them. They don't ask them any questions. They just immediately go to their side. So my concern is this does happen to me. I'm out there, I see an issue, I'm very curious about what's going on, I'd like to hear both sides. Where am I going to get it? I'm not going to get it from the media. So this is an effort with a project that I've been involved in. It's a limestone aggregate quarry proposed for Lower Parley's Canyon. And
okay, so just so people that are outside of the area, where is Parley's Canyon?
Well, Parley's is where Interstate 80 cuts through to go to Evanston. It's a major east-west corridor in the United States of America. It's a 8-lane freeway, carries between 60 and 100,000 cars a day through there, or vehicles, I should say, because that counts trucks. And how anybody can say that that's somehow an issue of the backcountry or wilderness, I have no idea.
But this does feed into the major resorts, right?
Yeah, it goes up to Park City.
Right.
It made me laugh on the quarry when the Olympics guy comes out and says that the IOC may be offended by a quarry. And I'm going, well, there's already a quarry there right across the freeway that's been there since the 1800s. And it was there when they had, I don't know if they put drapes over it in 2002 so they wouldn't offend the IOC, but I don't think so. And that was kind of a red herring because, as it turns out, his very good friend and the bid committee chair with whom he works every day, former speed skater, she and her husband have a rather substantial home up in that canyon. It's a gated cabin development is what I like to call it. They're called Mount Air, that is very near the quarry. And so I have a feeling maybe there's a little bit of home cooking there.
Right. Yeah. And often that's what happens, isn't it?
It is.
And so the press picks up on this initial thing, and they don't do a lot of research into it. They don't
care. The narrative's baked for them. The narrative, like I say, the facts don't drive the narrative. The narrative, the narrative colors the facts for today's media. Now, there are some exceptions, but very few. And anybody who's trying to get information about this quarry, we should watch this because there's been a full-blown campaign that these guys have done. It's like a political campaign.
And so this is really going to show us what they've done and kind of talk about it.
Yeah, and the reaction from these guys led the county council. It was almost a knee-jerk reaction. They tried to go back and rezone the land after it had been mining. It's the Warm Springs mining district. It's been mining land with mining claims for I don't know how many years, 150 years since the early days of settlement. And the county council, because of this thing that we're talking about, these little tiny groups that can make all this noise, they went in and rezoned the property, and that's going to end up in court, and the taxpayers are going to end up paying for the case.
So let's watch this.
You may have heard about a proposed rock quarry in Lower Parley's Canyon. The site is on private land.
So this is barely just coming into
just going into the canyon. Private land.
This proposed quarry has attracted noisy and very well-funded opposition. They've put out a full campaign. Bumper stickers, websites, even videos. That's all fine, except they only tell about half the story. You see, opposition groups can say anything they want, true or not. The media is never going to fact-check them. So a lot of people assume what they say is true.
Where I'm pointing right now is where there was a railroad.
Let's take a look at their website.
Up Parley's Canyon.
This animation here is a fake. It's not even close to reality. But how are people who see it supposed to know that? We get that some people don't like rock quarries. That's fair. But how do you justify this?
This is what I'm talking about.
Think about that for a minute. First off, how would toxic sludge like that come from grinding up rocks? Not bioweapons or nuclear sludge.
It can't be that we worry
Second,
about the quality of the water.
Do they really believe that regulators would stand by and let that happen to our creeks?
It's insulting.
The county's own documents show that Parley's Creek is contaminated with human waste, but not from rocks.
I got a story on that.
Hasn't anything been done about that? Another video uses scare tactics about blasting. Are they trying to convince us that quarries use cruise missiles? Here's what a real
There's
quarry
a real
blast
blast.
looks and sounds
There are
like.
real houses.
Those
They're
homes
1,000
are less
feet
than
away
1,000
or
feet away
less.
from that site. They're fine. In Parley's, owners in a nearby exclusive
And
gated
these are
cabin
the
development
elite of
claim
the
that quarry
elite, I
blasting will
promise.
damage their cabins,
in this
Oh, yeah.
despite being much further away and
So
having
they're
a
way
major
over there.
mountain ridge
Quarry's
protecting
way
them.
over here.
Here's another ridiculous video. How can a 20-acre mine be
A
bigger than
20-acre
Kennecott?
mine. And this is how
Please
they
stop
represent
trying
it.
to fool people with deceptive videos. For months now, quarry opponents have been out telling their side of the story. But just because today's media won't report it doesn't mean there isn't another side. It's Work Right Utah's plan to tell the whole story on this and other issues. Please visit workrightutah.org to learn more. And thanks for watching.
So we've come up with this idea of Work Right Utah. And it's, I mean, the quarry is front and center right now. It's kind of a front burner issue, but it's not the only one. There are others, and they happen all the time. And you remember the Legacy Highway.
Right.
I mean, the Friends of the Great Salt Lake, the Audubon Society, I don't know who, Sierra Club, they all jumped on that. And they all said, well, that's wetlands. And all it did was cost the state another $300 million and delay the completion. And they made, Governor Huntsman made some concessions. I don't think most people could even tell you what they were now. And all it did was cost a bunch of money and time for really no reason. It's that
And the whole
same
time we had
thing.
that traffic backed up,
Right.
blowing
And
out.
And it's that same thing where you got this little group of people who happen to be well heeled and can bring some money to the thing. And boy, does the press jump on it. They're just right there with them, lockstep every step of the way.
So what do we do about this? What are you guys trying to do overall?
I mean, hopefully in this case and the case of a few others, I mean, my kind of like hope would be that we can apply. You notice we're not trying to beat anybody up there. You know, we're not calling anybody names. They're free to have that. They're free to have to oppose a quarry. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is they can't just say, well, we're a little bit worried about the water quality up there. It has to be, oh, it's going to turn into this toxic sludge. Well, we worry about blasting because that could interrupt things. No, it has to look like it's going to be a nuclear explosion. And they can't talk about a 20-acre mine. They have to show something that I don't even know where that is. It's bigger than Kennecott. Looked like the Gobi Desert. You know, so we're not trying to call names or anything else. Here's how I look at it, John. There's a law. There's a law in the state of Utah. Number one, we respect private property. It's very important to know this is not public property. This is private property. So we respect that in the state of Utah, I hope. Certainly the founders did. And the law says that if you own that property and there's something on it that you want to be able to extract, here's the set of guidelines you have to follow in terms of air quality, in terms of water quality, in terms of dust mitigation. And if you can do those things, then you should get that permit. That's what the regulators are supposed to do. And instead, this other force comes in and brings in what I think are a bunch of red herring issues, you know, and they appeal to people's emotions. And like Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your emotion or your feelings.
Right.
You know, but that's what they bring into the argument. So it's not an argument about the law. And these are the things you have to do to be able to satisfy the law. But to me, it's insulting to the legislature. It's insulting to the regulators, the executive branch, to act like that's what they would allow to happen here, because it's ridiculous, it's absurd. People need to see that, and as they make their decision, and they're free to make a decision, there'll be people that still won't support that quarry. I understand that, but at least they'll have the information.
Yeah.
And they'll know that there's another side. A friend of mine says it's a pretty thin pancake that doesn't have two sides. And this is one where, you know, we need to get both of them out there.
So we're going to take a break. We'll come back.
Hey, gang. For all things Utah politics, make sure you tune in to PoliticIt, the greatest podcast around, with your host, Senator John Johnson. We'll see you soon. Ciao, baby.
Welcome back to PoliticIt podcast. Dave Owen here, and this is a big issue because I think people in general really are leery of the press, right? How do we get to the point where we don't have this outsized influence from outsiders?
I don't know that we can actually stop doing that. What we can try to do is counterbalance it, which is what Work Right Utah is about. And by the way, it's workrightutah.org. This is all early stages. We don't really know what this is going to look like. I would love for it to be a bigger thing. I've got other clients throughout the years where my feeling has been that we elect Republicans, and sometimes it seems like Democrats run the state. Now, I want to make it clear that from what I know, the regulators on this quarry thing have been, I think they've been trying to do their job. They have a job to do. They should be allowed to do it. Everybody wants to protect the air and the water, and to accuse and to say otherwise is absurd. And so, but then you get this pressure coming in from the public, which is again based on emotion or some kind of insider deal or who knows what. But like, for example, there's this one doctor who talks all the time about clean air. And in one of their videos, he's talking about the backcountry and how valuable wilderness is. Well, they don't bother to tell you that he has a cabin in Mount Air. So of course he doesn't want a quarry next door. And I get that. They're free to oppose that, but they should tell the truth, and there should be another voice.
Yeah, and it's not like they didn't know that property was there.
Yeah,
how it was zoned.
Well, and we'll get into this with some other videos that we have coming. We're going to talk about the fact that there's lower Parleys and there's upper Parleys. Upper Parleys is public land. It's protected watershed. Lower Parleys is not. It's always been private land. And when you go up there and take the little tour sometime, maybe I'll get a chance to give you that sometime, but there was a railroad up through there. There was a cement plant. There were mines all throughout, gold and silver and silica. And so that's always been the working part of the canyon. They're what they call Suicide Rock at the mouth of the canyon. Uh-huh. That was dammed up. That was the first reservoir for Salt Lake City. And people don't realize that. So the nature of the lower Parley's Canyon is that it's always been industrial. That interchange there by Mount Air was put there to serve the property owners on that, off the freeway when they took out US 40 and made it I-80, a major interstate. They had to be able to get access because there was commercial value there. And without that access, that commercial value would go away. And so anyway, my hope would be that this starts to inform people. It's that series of questions that I like to do at the end of a poll. If you knew X, Y, and Z, would you be more or less likely to support? Would you be more or less likely to oppose? And I have a feeling, and it's usually the case, that when Utahns have more information, then they're prepared to make a better decision. And I think you guys are up on the Hill trying to do a good job. I mean, to pass the laws that protect the air and the water and all that kind of thing. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have input, they should, but they should tell the truth and they should make their arguments factual. And if we can balance that a little bit, I mean, my dream, I work up also in Wyoming, and there's a publication that's come online there called Cowboy State Daily. And I'm sure we're short on time, but I've read about really controversial issues in there, and I've gotten to the end of a very long article, and I have no idea what the reporter thinks.
Yeah.
And it's such a refreshing
well, and that's
thing.
that was Walter Cronkite, right?
Well, kind of. My dad never agreed with you on that one. Yeah, that's another story. But certainly 20 years ago, there's no way. Reporters are human. They can't help but be biased, but you can always be fair. Right. And now they've just done away with all pretense.
Well, I mean, that's an issue we face all the time on the Hill, because we sit in a committee and we see the cameras there, and then we go home and we watch the story and we think, actually, that's not exactly what happened.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I've mentioned that Adam Carolla, who I'm a fan of, he does a podcast, and he says nobody really understands the meaning of the term fake news until they're in the story.
Right.
And I've seen that for my entire career. So Work Right Utah is an effort. I don't know exactly what it's going to turn into, but at least on this issue, I would like especially voters in Salt Lake County, citizens, really, it's not a voting issue, but citizens in Salt Lake County, to have both sides. And I just have a feeling that there's a whole series of if you knews that would, right now, if you asked them, they would say one thing. If they have more information, they will likely say another. And that's kind of the effort that we're promoting right now.
It's fascinating. I hope that continues.
And I hope it goes on to other projects, which we've discussed.
Yeah.
You know, it's a thing that needs to be done. We need to balance it. I would love to have a Cowboy State Daily for Utah, but I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Yeah. Well, Dave Owen, thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right.